The true origin of dragons. Long before humankind rose to dominate the earth, the world was shaped by forces that science has only begun to imagine. Hidden in the folds of time lies the true origin of dragons, creatures of immense power, wisdom, and mystery, whose stories have been told in whispers and fireside tales across cultures. This is their story. Eons ago, when the earth was young, it was a realm of chaos. Volcanic eruptions split the sky, oceans churned with relentless fury, and the land was a patchwork of molten rock and unyielding storms. Amid this tumultuous landscape, an energy pulsed beneath the surface, a living, sentient force known as the ether. The ether was neither good nor evil, it was raw potential, seeking balance in an unbalanced world. As it seeped into the Earth's crust, it found its vessel, an unassuming race of reptilian creatures that roamed the volcanic plains. Small and agile, they were unremarkable predators, yet the ether chose them for their resilience. The infusion of ether transformed these creatures. They grew in size and intelligence, their bodies adapting to channel the energy coursing through them. Their scales hardened into impenetrable armor, and their breath became a weapon of elemental fury, fire, ice, lightning, and even poison. Thus, the first dragons, known as the Elder Scales, were born. The first flight. Battle between the Flameborn and the Skyward. The Elder Scales were unlike any other life forms on Earth. Towering above the primordial forests, their wings could blot out the sun, and their roars echoed across continents. With their newfound power, they became guardians of balance, enforcing harmony in a chaotic world. But with power came conflict. Not all dragons agreed on how to wield the ether's gift. Two factions emerged. The Flameborn, who believed in dominating the earth to impose order, and the Skyward, who sought to protect its natural cycles. The origins of the first flight were rooted in a philosophical divide among the Elder Scales. The Flameborn, led by the mighty dragon Ignir, saw themselves as the rightful rulers of the earth. To Ignir and his followers, power was not a burden but a right. They believed that their strength, derived from the ether, gave them the responsibility to shape the world as they saw fit, even if it meant bending nature to their will. The Skyward, led by Orth, opposed this ideology. They revered the balance of nature, understanding that their power was a gift to preserve, not dominate. To the Skyward, the Flameborn's vision threatened to destabilize the fragile harmony of the world. Tensions simmered for centuries. Small skirmishes erupted in remote valleys and volcanic plains, but neither side dared to escalate, until the Day of Flame. It began with an act of defiance. Ignir, in a show of dominance, unleashed his wrath on a vast forest known as the Verdant Expanse, a sacred sanctuary protected by the Skyward. The firestorm consumed everything in its path, leaving only smoldering ruins where life had once thrived. To the Flameborn, it was a demonstration of their superiority. To the Skyward, it was an unforgivable act of desecration. Orth called a council of the Skyward in the great crystalline halls of the Starspire, their ancestral sanctuary. The Skyward dragons, their scales shimmering with hues of the sky, gathered under Orth's leadership. With somber resolve, they decided that the Flameborn could no longer be allowed to act unchecked. "We did not choose this war," Orth declared, his voice resonating through the chamber. "But we will not stand by while Ignir burns the world to ash." The battle began in the Worm Reach, a vast volcanic plain surrounded by jagged peaks. The Flameborn amassed their forces there, confident in their dominion over the infernal terrain. Their scales glowed like molten lava, and the air around them shimmered with heat. Ignir stood at the forefront, his wings spanning nearly the length of a mountain ridge. His eyes burned with an inner fire as he awaited the arrival of his adversaries. The Skyward descended from the heavens like a tempest. Orth led the charge, his silver-blue scales reflecting the sunlight as thunderclouds swirled in his wake. The air crackled with energy as his followers flew behind him, their roars shaking the peaks. The two armies collided in a blinding explosion of elemental fury. The Flameborn struck first, their fiery breath scorching the air. Columns of flame shot toward the Skyward, forcing them to scatter. Ignir himself lunged at Orth, his claws tearing through the clouds as the two leaders met in midair. Their clash sent shockwaves rippling across the battlefield. Orth retaliated with a storm of his own creation. He summoned a vortex of wind and lightning, engulfing Ignir in a blinding tempest. The Flameborn leader roared in defiance, his flames cutting through the storm like a blade. Below them, their followers waged a brutal war. Fire met frost as Flameborn and skyward dragons clashed. The ground trembled under their weight, and the sky was alight with bursts of elemental power. Flameborn dragons rained fire upon their enemies, turning the battlefield into a hellscape, but the skyward countered with icy breath that froze flames mid-air and storms that extinguished even the fiercest infernos. For days, the battle raged without a clear victor. The Flameborn's raw power was matched by the skyward's precision and strategy. But the tide turned when Ignir unveiled his ultimate weapon, the Heartfire. The Heartfire was a fragment of the ether, a molten core of energy that Ignir had extracted from the earth itself. It burned with an intensity that dwarfed even the brightest stars. With it, Ignir unleashed a torrent of fire so immense that it tore through the ranks of the skyward, leaving devastation in its wake. Orth, sensing that the battle could not be won through sheer force, devised a desperate plan. He called upon his most trusted allies to help him harness the power of the storm itself. Together, they channeled their energy into the sky, summoning a tempest unlike any seen before, a maelstrom of wind, water, and lightning. The storm engulfed the Heartfire, its energy colliding with the raw power of the ether. The resulting explosion was cataclysmic. Mountains crumbled, the earth split open, and the sky was filled with a blinding light. Dragons on both sides were thrown from the sky, their roars drowned out by the fury of the storm. When the dust settled, the battlefield was unrecognizable. The Worm Reach, once a land of fire and stone, had been transformed into a desolate wasteland. Rivers of molten rock flowed where valleys had been, and towering peaks had been reduced to rubble. Orth emerged from the wreckage, battered but unbroken. Ignir was nowhere to be found, his fate unknown. Many dragons had fallen on both sides, their bodies scattered across the ruined landscape. Realizing the cost of their conflict, Orth gathered the surviving dragons and declared an end to the war. The Elder Scales would retreat from the world, allowing it to heal from the scars they had inflicted. The Skyward and the remaining Flameborn would go their separate ways, vowing never to repeat the mistakes of the first flight. Millennia passed, and the Earth changed. Life flourished, and a new species began to rise, humanity. At first, humans were insignificant to the dragons, little more than clever primates. But as humans developed tools, language, and civilizations, the dragons began to take notice. Some dragons, curious and intrigued, approached humanity, offering their wisdom. They taught early humans about the stars, the seasons, and the power of fire. In return, humans revered them as gods and protectors, building temples and monuments in their honor. But not all humans viewed dragons with reverence. To some, the creatures were a threat, their power too great to coexist with humanity's ambitions. These humans sought to hunt dragons, using spears, traps, and eventually iron weapons. The dragons, weary from their ancient conflicts, had no desire for another war. Many retreated deeper into the earth, while others hid in plain sight, disguising themselves as mountains or slumbering beneath lakes. Despite their retreat, dragons never severed their connection to humanity. They chose certain individuals, poets, shamans, and sages, to be their secret keepers. These individuals carried the knowledge of the dragons, preserving their history and teachings. One such keeper was Kellen, a young healer in a small village nestled at the base of the Dragonspine Mountains. Kellen had always felt a strange connection to the world around her. She could sense the heartbeat of the earth, the whisper of the wind, and the warmth of the sun as if they spoke directly to her. One day, while gathering herbs near a secluded cave, Kellen stumbled upon a massive dragon, its scales shimmering like molten gold. At first, she was terrified, but the dragon spoke to her in a deep, resonant voice. "Do not fear me, child," it said. "I am Orth, last of the Elder Scales. The world has forgotten us, but we have not forgotten the world. I see in you the spirit of a keeper. Will you carry our legacy?" Kellen, though overwhelmed, agreed. Orth shared with her the secrets of the dragons, their history, their powers, and their warnings for humanity. Kellen became the bridge between the two worlds, a silent guardian of the dragon's truth. The corruption of the ether. But the ether, the source of the dragon's power, was not without its dangers. Over the centuries, fragments of it seeped into the world, corrupting those who sought to harness it for selfish ends. Kings and warlords, desperate for power, sought out these fragments, forging weapons and spells capable of rivaling the dragons. One such fragment fell into the hands of Lord Malkyr, a tyrant obsessed with immortality. Using the ether's energy, he created an army of abominations, creatures twisted by the power of the ether, their forms monstrous and unstable. The dragons, realizing the threat posed by Malkyr, emerged from hiding. Led by Orth, they confronted the tyrant in a final, desperate battle. The skies burned as dragons clashed with Malkyr's abominations, their roars mingling with the cries of the corrupted. Kellen, now an Elder Keeper, played a crucial role. Using the knowledge passed down to her, she crafted a ritual to seal the remaining fragments of ether deep within the earth, beyond the reach of mortals. But the cost was great. Many dragons, including Orth, sacrificed themselves to ensure the ether would no longer be a threat. Kalen's final words, recorded in the Book of Scales, capture the essence of the dragon's legacy. Dragons are not beasts of greed or destruction, but guardians of balance. When humanity faces its darkest hour, the dragons will rise again, not as enemies, but as protectors. Today, traces of dragons can still be found by those who know where to look. The mountains that seem unnaturally shaped, the lakes that shimmer with an unearthly glow, and the winds that carry whispers of ancient voices, these are the remnants of the Elder Scales. For those who believe, the dragons are not gone. They are merely waiting, biding their time until the world is ready to remember the truth.